Mr. Chair, you are live.
Thank you, Madeline. All right. Quorum being present, this meeting of the Annapolis Historic Preservation Commission for the 22nd of June shall come to order. The commission operates pursuant to the land use article of the annotated code of the state of Maryland. Local authority for the commission is derived from the code of the city of Annapolis, chapter 21, section 56. The purpose of the HPC is to preserve sites, structures, and districts of historical, cultural, archaeological, and architectural significance. Requirements for serving on the commission are detailed in chapter 21, section 8.06. The HPC operates pursuant to the state of Maryland Open Meetings Act, and therefore no pending application shall be discussed outside the public hearing to determine the disposition of the application. Okay, next on the agenda is roll call. I am Tim Leahy. I serve as chair. We have Bobby Collins serves as vice chair.
Here.
Will Scott. Leslie Xavier.
Here.
Kim Finch.
Present.
Great. And then our staff, our stalwart staff, John Tower is here, and Kimberly Consoli is our recorder. She is taking and will prepare our minutes for us. Okay. We have no other business except for we now have four free application hearings sessions this evening. First is 80 Compromise Street. So Madeline, can you please promote the presenters for that?
This should be on in a second.
Okay, got the whole team here.
Hello.
Hello.
How's it going?
Marshall, Andy, and Leo, welcome.
Hello.
This is a pre-application hearing, and as you know, it is a courtesy extended to potential or probable applicants to provide guidance on design, and nothing that we are saying should be construed as approval or disapproval. Can you please acknowledge that?
So acknowledged.
Yes.
Acknowledged. All right. So who's leading the charge tonight?
I think that'll be me tonight. I think Marshall's going to drive for us.
Okay.
Yeah.
Please tell us and we'll have a conversation.
Okay, well, thanks for having us. And this project is about the Annapolis Waterfront Hotel as we know it. What's happened here is the folks who run Chop Tank have negotiated a long-term lease to operate the restaurant facilities at the hotel, which now is operated by Pussers. So that will happen probably not this year, it'll happen next year. And we're in the process of helping them with the proposed reconfiguration of the dining space to accommodate two restaurants instead of one. So, so let's go on and dive into it.
Yeah.
So,
okay, here we go.
yeah, thanks, Marshall.
Sure.
So what you see here, and I'll go through these quickly, so we'll get to the good part. Here's Ego Alley and the waterfront area here. The restaurant space right now, you come in from the street, and we all remember that walk into the restaurant space, and most of the time is spent either outside here by the outdoor dining and bar area. And then there's also kind of like a nightclub room in here. I don't know if any of you've ever been in there. I've only been in there once or twice, but I think late at night it's kind of a pretty big party spot. And then outside there's an exterior stair that leads to the rooftop deck. So, and then there's support space back here. So we'll go to the second floor. And on the second floor, that same area, you come up that stair from the dock and you come up to this rooftop area. There's a large tent right here used for events. There's a big storage shed. There's sometimes have people out here, like when they have events, they walk out here and hang out. And I've seen tables and chairs, although infrequently. And so the ballroom space here is the same. They've got support facilities for that after you come up the elevator over here, and then this outdoor space. So next slide. We drew elevations of it. They're difficult to read because it's so big and to fit on the sheet. But a couple of things you'll notice here, there's kind of a blue metal roof that goes across the part where the restaurant is. The bar, I think, has a different type of canvas roof, if I'm not mistaken. And then also we have the main entry component in the center with the Pussers moniker on it. And you can see the dining facility, or the ballroom facilities on the second floor, and the storage shed, and of course the stair. Next slide. I'll just run through a couple of images. We all know what it looks like. You can see in this slide the kind of the faux green roof, and then the green curved piece, and of course the blue canopy over the bar area. Next slide. I like this one because this kind of gives you a sense of what's happened upstairs. My understanding was at one point there was actually a pool up here. Some of you who have been here a while may remember that. I know Ted told me he remembered that. So here you can see the ballroom facility adjacent to the hotel. Really not part of the hotel proper. There's the big awning out there that's covered area. I remember when we went to the inauguration for Mayor Buckley, that there's another tent on that flat roof area. You can see the storage shed, and of course the awnings and canopies over the restaurant and bar facilities, and then that center marker. Not sure what that really, I guess that's part of the signage package. Next, same stuff, you can see it. It just kind of looks like a conglomeration to me of pieces that must have been here that predated the HPC. I don't really know. I mean, there's really not, I don't know how that happened, but yeah. Anyway.
Yeah.
And then just another overview of it and a close-up of it. So, you know, I think it served its purpose for Pussers. You know, it gave them kind of an identity there. But it's always felt a little ramshackle to me. And I'm hopeful that what we're going to do is going to provide an improvement there. Also, the rooftop piece, you know, one of the things that we're thinking about is I think the place would benefit from activating that space myself with the new ownership. And remember, this is the guys who have Chop Tank, and they've really learned a lot about the value of that second floor space. So we're hoping to capture that and put it into better use there. It really doesn't change. You know, I'm not adding too much other than enclosing a portion of this, but the piece closest to the edge, the only change will be the removal of that center piece. So, so the plan, so here you can see, you know, kind of the outdoor bar as it sits today. It's about the same spot. We've got dining tables outside, same as we've had from the beginning. The changes here are really, you know, to support a higher end kind of dining experience. So you'll come in, this has all been opened up through the center, which doesn't mean much to you guys, but I tried to make it so it wasn't such a labyrinth, and the toilet facilities there are woefully inadequate for the restaurants. I'm sure you've all seen that. So we come into one restaurant venue here. And so it's a smaller one with booths, some 2 tops and 4 tops, a bar area, and then doors that go out to the dock. Pretty simple. And then the one to the bottom of the screen is a larger restaurant. And again, it's going to be a little more upscale. The bar is about in the same place it was for Pussers. We're going to take the steps out and make it a little more of a, you know, I don't know how to put this, but just a higher level dining experience that I think would be a welcome change. The one thing that changes outside that's of merit is that exterior stair that goes directly up to the upstairs to the rooftop. There's a control problem there. You know, if people get onto the dock, then they can get to the roof. And so we've elected to bring that stair inside the restaurant so that it's attached to the restaurant and not just open to the public. It gives us more control. It provides a safer environment up there. And it's not a fire exit stair. The fire exit stair is included in the hotel. So it's just a convenience stair. And then upstairs, you'll see there's two significant changes. The portions in gray are essentially the hotel proper, and they'll stay as they are. What we'd like to do is provide a more permanent enclosure for that tent area, the awning, if you will. So you'll see that directly adjacent to the ballroom. And then the space where the rooftop is, we'd like to enclose a portion of that so we can have, we can expand the dining and kind of outdoor experience by putting some tables and chairs up on that deck. And taking down that center kind of curved piece that you might remember from the photographs, and taking down all the metal awnings and just really simplifying the roof forms up there. Marshall, can you trace along where the enclosure is intended to be for me with your cursor?
Sure.
Yeah, I'm really just
Mhm.
concerned about yeah, there you go. So that's the part I'd like to enclose. Again, we stayed away from the waterfront because there are view issues there, but I feel like, enclosing that piece up there actually does a lot of things well, not the least of which is it enhances the appearance of what you'll see, and you'll see that in our next slides. Let's go to the next one, Marshall.
Yep.
So again, these elevations are really hard to read. We'll get into the three-dimensional imagery of it. I think what you can get a sense of, though, is it's a little cleaner, a little crisper, a little less kind of like Disneylandish. It's really just trying to tie it into a simpler aesthetic that, doesn't seem to be, it's not trying to call attention to itself with kind of color and all that other stuff. But I think it will be nice. So this gives you a better sense of what we've got in mind. You'll see this one's pretty good. I think this one's just okay. Let's go to the next one, Marshall. Yeah, this is a little bit better. And we'll come back to these, but I'm just letting you get your eyes on where we're headed with this. Next one. Yeah, this starts to give you a better sense of what we're doing. The intent here is to clean this up and just make it a little bit to elevate the experience. So we've gone away from the heavy marker for the entrances and gone to real simple entry components that go out to the dock. The bar area is cleaned up. We've taken out some of the decorative arch motifs that were in there and some of the filigree and all of that. It's a real simple, a dark colored awning. And then just all of the components that you get back into the bar area start to take on a more uniform feel to them. There's wood panels on the wall, slats. And then the second restaurant down at the other end carries these same lines through, but just changes the way the elements that create an awning out there. We thought it would be better if we got rid of some of that blue stuff and green stuff and just went to a real simple, something not dissimilar from what the yacht club has with the light shelves out there, and then tie this whole thing together with a uniform, like kind of furniture palette that, of course we know it needs approval, but just keeping it simple. What you can see here, I think is nice, is you can see that the second floor is activated a little bit with tables and chairs. I like to create a little green space at the top of these second floor places, similar to what we did at Chop Tank. We're planning to do a green wall between the parking area, which is still, you can see that off to the right. So kind of a green wall, if you will, between the dining experience upstairs and the restaurant hospitality experience. The pieces that are new, you can see, if we start over on the left side, you'll see that where it says signage there, that's the enclosure for the stair now. So the stair outside goes away and we go to that. If you go to the piece directly adjacent to that, that's where the new indoor bar area would be. Again, it's got picks up that light shelf motif again. We raise up the centerpiece for two reasons. One, to get light further into this space, but also to start to kind of hide a little more. This view shows it more readily, but if you're down at the water, that will help hide the ballroom area, which is kind of that mansard roof thing. And then just changing the roof component for the tent piece to a pitched element with just glass panels in it. It's not dissimilar from the tent experience. It's just enclosed so that we can use it more easily. The tent is always up there. I've not been up there when it hasn't been there.
Mhm.
So, and then finally, a couple of close-ups. This gives you a better sense of what I think you would see if you were coming into Ego Alley. It just has a crisper feel to it. It's just a little bit cleaner. It's not trying to shout too much, I think. There's wood material in here, stucco and metal, not really anything synthetic, other than maybe, I don't know, some ancillary elements that probably don't matter much. And then if we go down to the other end, Marshall, this is our vision for the outdoor bar area. Again, just a little more upscale, clean it up a little bit, and provide just a newer experience. So the canopy piece is almost like a wood trellis assembly, and taking out a lot of the metal that's in there now and just kind of making it a little softer that way. So that's kind of where we're headed with this thing. Again, I think I'm excited about having a new operator there. Pussers has been it was a good time when I was younger. I'm not so excited about going there these days. And, it's fun to pull up by boat, but it would be, my wife's not interested in going. So I'm hopeful that she would be interested in doing this. So, but we'll see, we'll see what everybody thinks. And as you know, we're in our kind of infancy right now. We're just kind of trying to get our arms around this thing. And we thought we'd start by seeing if maybe you could provide some guidance about what you're seeing here and what you think is appropriate and maybe what may not be. So Marshall and Andrew, do you think I've missed anything?
I think you covered it all.
Yeah, I think you got it.
Okay, well, thanks, guys. Thanks.
Great.
So with that, I'll turn it over to you guys and we
All
can
right, great.
maybe hear what you guys think.
Great. Well, like we usually try and do is separate the kind of the separate pieces. It's a pretty big project, ambitious, I would say. And there are several areas to talk about that hit different guideline areas. There's obviously a discussion we should have around views from the water, so we should touch on that. I would consider this an addition to an existing non-contributing building. Just want to set that. I think we all agree this building is non-contributing. And there's discussions around the design and the materials being used. And the massing as an addition, I think so. Those are the main things. There's also going to be a discussion, I think, if we go in order to about what our furniture design guidelines are and how they relate to this building. And I think those are the main guidelines. I got my little checklist going here. We'll talk about lightings and also just the storefront. There are some guidelines regarding storefronts, and I would determine most of the facade of this as a storefront design. So if we just touch on each of those and express our opinions or our thoughts in terms of feasibility. So John, can you kick us off? What are your thoughts around those items?
Well, it's ambitious, but it also saves me from going down to Pussers and asking them to conform with our outdoor furniture guidelines, which they never have. So I see possibilities here. And Leo mentioned that the materials would be natural stucco, wood, metal. That would be, certainly favorable. The massing of the addition, I looked at it before and it didn't quite strike me the way it does now. It's prominent. So that's something to be discussed. I'm also anticipating that the windows on the lower storefront are possibly, and correct me if I'm wrong, but possibly going to be of the roll-up variety that are at Choptank. I don't know. It's just a thought, but it seems like an obvious opportunity for a restaurant to be able to open up to the outside and close when the weather is inclement. So it's I guess a nascent design, but in terms of guidelines, I don't see it's somewhat harmonious, with the exception of the massing of the addition roof. Otherwise, it could be a good use for an underused space.
Okay, yeah, Will?
Could I just respond to that for a second? Because I just wanted to
Oh, sure.
clarify something.
Sorry.
John, you know, that the connection to the outdoor is a real big part of these waterfront dining experiences, but we want to handle this one in a slightly different fashion. It's, I think, the nano wall assembly that kind of accordions to the left and right is what we have envisioned for this first floor here, rather than the tilt up doors. That has a nice feel to it. It feels a little bit more industrial, as you will. And I think this will be a little like a step up from that. And so the nano wall, I think, will be a little different experience. So just a thought.
Nano wall being the accordion style.
They slide in.
Fivefold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I think they're at the yacht club, right? The ground floor
were.
of the yacht club? They were
were
before the
lower-
fire. They were
Right,
there
the
before
lower
the fire.
level.
Yeah, they never worked well there, so they took them out.
Well, thank you, Leo.
Yeah, sure.
Tim, I have a question of Leo first, and then not really depending, but subsequent to that, I want to ask the same question of John, if I may. Leo, have you changed the footprint of the overall construction in any way? The footprint?
So the footprint, the answer is no. The first floor walls are in the exact same place that they are now. The canopies and awnings shift a little bit, but we tried to keep them close to where they were relative to, you know, the waterfront, that type of thing. The
Yeah.
footprint change is limited, you know, the only volumetric change is limited to the enclosure of that area on the second floor, but it's over
Right.
existing structure.
That's the way I was reading it. I just wanted to be sure that that's what you were intending to present to us. And so, John, I would ask you, what makes this an addition? It seems like a renovation.
Well, the addition's on the second floor.
So it's only that enclosed space, that sort of rectangular space.
Yeah, I believe so. I guess there's some additional
okay,
enclosure on the second floor too.
It's a
But,
renovation and
right.
an addition. It's really two projects, a renovation and an addition, I would say. Yeah.
Right.
And also you're converting some parking places into dining
No, there's no,
Yeah.
I
on
don't
the
think.
second floor? On the second floor?
Well, let me just check. Hey, Marshall, do I
It
have?
sure
that-
doesn't look that way.
Does the parking?
All
go
those,
the
all
way
those
to the-
umbrellas stretching on the second floor are parking right now, I believe.
Yeah, you may be right. You may be right. And Marshall's going to
Yeah.
clarify.
Well,
for us.
if you're right, then I congratulate you for getting rid of some parking that you could see from the water and replacing it with something appropriate. And
Yeah, so-
my next question is, John, what is the definition of a storefront, and how does a restaurant / bar become a storefront?
I can't.
I just, let
definition
me
of a
clarify my
storefront
use of that. The reason I'm bringing that up is we have 3 guidelines that specifically talk about storefronts and then.
Well, and
awnings.
the
So that's
reason
why
I'm bringing it up is because I don't think it's a storefront. Should not be treated
it's
as
just-
a storefront.
It's just
Oh,
a
here.
facade.
Here,
Okay, I was
can
making
read
that.
it from the guidelines.
No, I was the one that brought it up. If Will, you're saying it's just a facade treatment, that's fine too. But
Oh, okay.
So
I don't think there's any problem with the guidelines in terms of the facade and calling it a storefront.
Right.
It's just a storefront assembly. That's a term in the trade. So
it's D34 is the guideline.
Yeah.
And also D35 would cover this too. You know, let's say
Use those.
a relevant sentence is new design should reference the historic pattern of storefront components, fenestrations, and materials for its period. Well, of course,
it's not.
this is not really relevant because
Yeah.
it's not a contributing structure.
Correct. Right. Okay. That clarified my questions in my mind. Thank you.
Yeah, Bobby?
Having just sat through the City Dock Action Committee's plan for City Dock and heard about how the entire City Dock area has to be raised up to the flood protection level, is that going to be incorporated into this design? Because I may be wrong, but I don't think that the current level of pussers is gonna meet with the heights that are required for the flood protection.
Yeah, that's a great question. Absent the ability to tear it down and start over, I can't raise that floor because the ceiling heights aren't very high. My guess is that they'll end up having to do flood protection out at the bulkhead location where there's some type of automated system that will come up, and they're using that in other areas of the city dock. So rather than raise the building, they'll have to have flood protection that follows the bulkhead.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not suggesting they raise the floor, but I'm just saying has some plan for either current or very soon future, flood protection been kind of incorporated into the thought process?
We haven't really paid much attention to it, and that's a shortcoming on our side. We really need to figure out what they're going to do there. And I think, the applicant is a tenant here. So I think it's a broader discussion with the ownership of the hotel. And I have talked to their operators, but not about that. So why don't I commit to y'all to enter into that discussion with them and see what their long-term plan is, because it's quite an investment, and you can't serve drinks when their feet are wet.
Oh, yeah, you can.
Ken, have you been to Charleston?
Oh, good Lord.
Thanks, Leo.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, it's a good point, Bobby. All right, Kim or Leslie, what are your thoughts?
I definitely think that it's a much more elegant use of the space. I'm a little bit, I don't know what to think. So, when you look at areas like the chart house on the other side, when you look at the yacht club, and you have contemporary buildings, but they're in such a way that is more intimate and less like Baltimore. And so I don't know whether it's perspective views that you're showing, but it just feels awfully commercial. And I don't know, because here we have Annapolis with our very historic waterfront, but in such a small space. And if you have the opportunity to take a space and make it something, oh, he's going to change that for me now. But I just want to, there's just part of me that wants to try and remain in scale. And on that second floor, it's now starting to look more like Baltimore than Annapolis. And I certainly salute you for making that more of a beautiful, building and a more elegant eating establishment. I just, I see the the historic buildings behind it. And maybe it's just also that I know that Eagle Alley is not that wall-eyed view that you're showing. So Eagle Alley is much more small and intimate. So I just not understanding, or I can't really get a really good perspective on how that's going to, cooperate with the historic nature of that area right there.
It's a conundrum, because, your point's well taken. I'm looking at it myself now and thinking, there are like the first floor is frankly easy, right? Because it's just kind of
Sure.
there. And so you can improve that and add some more kind of a more graceful, singular statement there without effort. Like it's just not hard. The second floor is a little bit harder only because it's new architecture. And I don't disagree that the bar piece, especially, looks like I will see this kind of more, I'll say almost contemporary piece up there that could maybe be softened a bit so that it becomes more background and less of a focal element up there. Not that what's up there now is any great shakes, frankly, it's awful, but
Oh, it's awful.
think-
Yeah, I totally agree with you.
There's nothing there, yeah.
But I think that is the piece that's the hardest to get right. I think we have a starting point here, but I wouldn't be opposed to looking at that a little harder and how do we make that a little softer so it doesn't feel like, Baltimore. I mean, I'm not saying anything bad about Baltimore's waterfront, but Annapolis is a little softer and different and more quaint. And so that piece maybe needs a little work.
Tim,
Yeah, well,
I didn't make a statement about whether I thought it was feasible or anything because I was interested in getting those questions clear in my head. Leslie makes an excellent point that I think we all are considering and have to consider for every project like this. But my take is quite different. I do think that the part that needs the most attention is that new rectangular enclosure, only because us, that he's capable of doing that. So I think it's a completely feasible project as I see it here. And I would observe that if you stand at the cathedral in the center square of Vienna, you face a glass, irregularly shaped skyscraper.
Yep.
And it did not detract from my experience in Vienna. I'm not saying we should build a glass enclosed skyscraper here. I'm just saying that the modern, in the hands of skillful architects and careful planners, as I believe we are, works just fine. Just takes more work.
I'm not denying that, and I totally agree with you. I think that contemporary architecture is beautiful and wonderful, but we have to be mindful of the scale in Annapolis, and that's my only point.
Point well taken.
And I don't think this is a structure that needs to draw attention to itself. I don't need to be like in a figure ground study. This doesn't have to be where people are looking, Certainly their eye will be carried on the lower level because it's easy to see. And honestly, like if I'm driving down Eagle Alley, I probably, it doesn't feel this far away. I think you're right. But from the other side of Eagle Alley where the new park is going to be, you will see all of this. And I would like that piece to feel more, I don't know, just like almost fades back into the background. So I think that's a good point. I mean, I know the operators always want like people to say what's up there, but I think, people will discover it just over time, because there are so few of these second floor venues to get the view, and we're learning how successful they can be.
Leo, is that square building the same height, shorter or taller than the main structure behind it?
Where are we with that, Marshall? He's been kind of running that. I know he lost his internet connection. Do you know that offhand, Andrew? I think it's about the same height, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, it's about the same height, slightly smaller.
Okay.
Slightly lower.
Yeah, just by a little bit, a foot or two.
Yeah, because depending on the drawing that you're putting up, it sometimes it looks larger, sometimes it looks smaller, so it's,
Yeah, the perspective changes.
yeah.
Well, I would suggest you make it as low, the roof, as you can.
Yeah,
And even vary that.
And
I
that
think
would
we're-
go a long way towards at least alleviating. And this is really my only major concern about what you've shown us so far. But if you lowered that by 3 or 4 feet, I don't think I would have any concern about.
Yeah. Another approach, it's effectively a tent over a bar, a fixed tent over a bar.
It is, yeah.
A big bar is all it really is. So even it's just not making it a completely straight line might also soften it.
yeah. Andrew, doesn't that have a glass roof too? Like there's some glass panels in that roof?
Yeah, the thought was that it would be more like a
Almost like a
Trellis.
glass pavilion.
yeah, that has skylights and then also-
Arboretum, yeah.
so when you open it up,
Then
it
you
really
could lower it and not lose light.
Yeah, especially with the glass top. I mean, there's a part of me
there we
that
go.
wonders. I
Yeah, it is
wonder-
higher than, yeah. Well, it is that fixed, so we have 3 pieces here, the new square structure, then the
Okay.
sloping roof. Is that where the tent is now?
Yes.
Or
yeah,
it's an awning
yes.
now, so that's being enclosed as well, permanently.
Oh, yes, yeah.
I like that a lot. Yeah, that's very nice.
That's better.
But I
Yeah, but-
wonder, I think the first few times we drew this, that flat roof form we have over the bar piece was set up as a pitched element. We're trying to make it feel more like an outdoor experience because we'd like it to be open
Yeah,
as much as is
That's what I
practical.
felt, yeah.
So it
Right.
almost wanted to be like a pergola piece, but I think we may be too tall there. And I think we might want to look at, maybe the pergola happens in a different way.
Yeah, scale wise.
Yeah, I could see that.
Okay. And that's appropriate within our guidelines to talk about bulk and scale. Even though this is not a contributing building, it still is a visual element in the district. And
It's definitely an opportunity.
Yeah.
okay,
And then I'm going to ask a couple more questions if it's okay.
sure. Let me just check and see if Kim Finch wants to join the discussion.
Oh, sure.
Kim, do you
Yeah.
have any? Go
Yeah,
ahead.
Tim, I'm here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think my major concern here is views from the water as well. And I think things that Leslie said about scale and break a little bit would be appropriate to make it seem more consistent with sort of the general scale of downtown. This just seems just like a long piece with very little differentiation. I mean, I think some of the goals are good, but I think that it just provides, it doesn't provide any breaks in there to give you the sense of scale in downtown Annapolis. And this is that you're looking at from across the water, and I don't think you need to differentiate it this way it's not this way to say, oh, this is a new piece. It's pretty clear it's a new piece, but we're trying to integrate it better into the scale of downtown.
You're referring actually to the first floor in this case as well. It's
Both.
a long,
I'm talking-
one
I'm
long
ta-
element.
I'm talking about both levels
Mhm.
somehow, articulating the facade so that it doesn't read just as this very long mass.
Yeah, I got you. I understand what you're saying. And I think it's another good point.
And
So-
to understand too, when we're looking at this shot right here, we have on the left, on the first floor, a masonry structure that you're going to, looks like you're going to paint it a different color, because I think it's red brick now. Not even sure what it is. But then that gray element is a long gray awning, one long piece awning, fabric awning.
Well, it's intended to be a series of pieces, but it is a bit, I mean, it's long, it's
Yeah,
long
it might-
today and that's
It
another
is long
point.
today.
Like maybe there is a way to break that up a little bit and handle it in a different way.
But it is fabric, right?
It is
The gray
fabric, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, but there's a long element behind it is the actual facade that does seem to be broken into pieces, but maybe you can but breaking that long, I hear what Kim is saying is that's a long, long run there, and that from the water, that's going to read as one long, thin building. So
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
that's summarizing what Kim was saying, I believe.
Yeah, good point. I mean, it's, it's a really good point.
So is the view from the city center changing?
From the city dock?
No, I'm talking about when you're coming down Main Street
You won't see
and
this.
and and then you turn turn and go down, towards Puster's and towards the hotel. What does that view look like?
On Compromise Street, you mean?
Yes, I do.
From that side?
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll do a couple of views from over there, but my sense is that it will be largely invisible just because there's the ballroom in front of it. And by the time you get to a point where you could see it, you're almost past it. So, but we should look at it. I mean, that's what I think is going to happen, but we should look at that and see if it changes, what you see there. It's so far back. Like if you go and look at it from the rooftop view, Andrew, can you go back up from the high view in the photograph of what we have today? Go to the photograph today. Just as we're thinking about this, right?
Yeah.
Keep
Yeah.
coming back. It was one of my earliest shots, I think. Yeah, so the geometry is the trick here, right? Because you can see the parking in front of Fleet, and then you can see the wall that forms the enclosure. This is the one, yeah. Where the rooftop parking is. I don't think you're going to see any of this thing from that angle. It'd be really hard to see. Potentially, I've never seen the second floor because all I see is the ramp that goes up for the parking.
And that's an interesting statement unto itself.
Yeah.
Yeah, you might see, if you do intend to landscape it like you have shown, you might see that tree line. I guess those are trees and planters that might, along where those cars are parked, you might see those from Compromise.
Yeah, it's possible, although I don't believe you will.
You guys have definitely taken on a lot here.
Yeah, well,
An old image too. The building is white now. The hotel is white now. So
yeah, we got this off of. I think we got this off of.
I know. I'm saying that might be an interesting thing to pick up on. In fact, if you want to integrate it from a.
Yeah, it's a good point. We should probably.
And here you can also see the long run of the existing awning.
Yeah,
so you're not really changing that, but still, it's an opportunity, I think, to break it up a little bit and improve it.
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole end down there that doesn't cover anything, I mean, it could almost stop at the end of the bar and be a little more successful and help to break up that facade.
Yeah, and adding the second floor, it reinforces that long line as well. So I think what we're saying is that that long element there could be broken up.
Yeah.
It might even run into, there's actually some code or what we got into in the garage about the length of something that needs to be broken up. I can't remember in the geometry or the math, but
yeah, I'm reluctant.
I think you have an opportunity to improve it further.
Yeah, I mean, I looked at that stair tower piece and we thought about just trying to change it so the venues were separate, but we just thought it was, I mean, it's hard to do that well. I just didn't think it was that good. So.
All right.
Well, it's an extraordinary challenge and an opportunity. I'll be certainly, interested to see what you guys, what ideas you come up with.
Well, what I'd like to do is, we'll take this back and we'll start to think about it. We've got code issues we're trying to make sure that we're on the right side of, and zoning and all of that stuff. But we're going to progress this a bit more and come back and visit you if you'll have us again to do another work session with some other things.
Of course. All right. I'll do a quick summary on the 80 Compromise Street. We discussed multiple components of the design and which have different aspects of our guidelines. Views from the water, I'll weigh it. I concur with pretty much what everyone has said. So in my summary, I'm going to reinforce, I think, what most people said. The one thing we didn't specifically say, view from the water, which is important. I think this is not much of a change really in terms of a view from the water. In terms of the building, it is another second story, but I don't think that is a guideline issue. It is as a non-contributing building, the visual relationship of this new thing to the existing building is not an issue, but there were concerns about the scale of the rectangular building over the new bar area, that there were concerns about the scale of that, and perhaps it was not authentic to Annapolis or out of scale with the rest of this, effectively the streetscape. This happens to be on the water, but it still forms a part of the streetscape. The material design and materials we talked about are not synthetic in any way, but perhaps could be more relatable to the environment in Annapolis. It looks a little bit like other places as opposed to Annapolis, is what one referenced Baltimore. This could also be Seattle. So some more work on the materials, I think, would be useful there. We will be needing in the eventual, I think this is far away, but getting into the final presentation, the furniture and the umbrella designs are going to be important. The lighting is going to be important. And then just whatever detail you can provide on the facade here, which looks to be a mixture of solid and window designs, will be a little more. I know this is conceptual still, but in this drawing you can see you're going to need a little more, much more detail there, I'm sure. So based on that, I think the commissioners feel that this is a feasible concept and look forward to additional presentations. You're welcome back anytime. Commissioners, did I miss any points? Okay. Well, thank you. Look forward to the next steps.
Well, thanks again for the help and guidance, and we'll go back and continue to work on this thing and come and see you when we have some more to show.
Sounds
Thank
good.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Okay. Next on the agenda is 32 Cornhill Street. I will also, by the way, I did miss one thing. I missed Bobby's point there about not necessarily within our restriction or our guidelines, but flood protection is going to be important in the final design of that.
Yeah.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Well, it'll be in our purview if it affects the appearance
The
of the
visual.
building.
That's
So,
exactly. You're right. Exactly right.
So.
Yeah. How are they treating it? Good
Yeah.
point. I misspoke. Okay. It looks like we have Mike Ogle. Hello, Mike. Welcome. Welcome.
Good evening.
Good evening. This is a pre-application, which is a courtesy extended to probable applicants to provide guidance on the current state of your design. No statements should be taken as a approval or disapproval, and I just need you to acknowledge that, please.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Good evening.
Awesome.
My name is Michael Ogle. I'm with ABS Architects. Presenting tonight, 32 Cornhill Street, the Deckman Har residence renovation and addition. The early 20th century house sits mid-block on the north side of Cornhill Street. The owners propose to renovate the house fully, interior and exterior. There have been recent HPC approvals for roof replacement and foundation stabilization. Those are in the attachment.
Yeah. Can I ask you a real quick clarifying question there, Michael? Are those already completed, or are they basically are going to now be caught up? Those have been approved, which is fine.
Yes,
But
they've been completed.
They
Right.
have been completed, so the roof is replaced, and they did the caissons underneath.
That's right.
Okay, great. That was unclear. Thank you.
The proposed improvements are as follows. Now, let me back up. Originally a part of the Wallace property, the house and lot dimensions are typical of the vicinity, which encompasses Cornhill, Fleet Street, and Pinckney Streets. The two-story, 14-foot wide wood frame dwelling appears to be an early 20th century infill of a vacant lot. The owners propose to renovate the house fully, interior and exterior. And I will show you the proposed plans. If I could get you to look at the screen. Here is 32 Cornhill Street. For most part of the 19th century, this was a vacant lot. We find record that the structure was here approximately 1908. It's missing on the 1903 Sanborn. Show you that. So here is early Sanborn, 1886. We have no structure. And again, 1891, there's no structure. In 1903, again, no structure. Finally, here we are in 1908 Sanborn, 32 Cornhill shows up.
We love those Sanborn maps.
Yeah. Oddly enough, the house looks like its neighbors, which are from the 1850s. It also, the materials and siding all seem to be aged, contemporary to the earlier buildings. Maybe the house was used with scavenged materials or siding and components from another building. It does have an unusual pier foundation where the other buildings have more perimeter foundations. Size this page. So the house is sitting amongst the typical row homes. It has an alley on both sides, and in the rear, we're planning a small addition to replace this deck, as well as replacing the wood fence with a brick wall, a privacy wall. The addition will go here. This is a view from Pinckney Street. And you can see here as well.
Actually, it's Fleet Street.
Oh, sorry, Fleet. Pinckney's one more over. So the addition will be placed here against this back wall. And in the front, it sits amongst some good company. This is the view across the street, the John Brewer Tavern, late 18th century to early 19th century. And here we are with the front of 32 Cornhill. The front elevation has some condition issues. The building is leaning out of plumb. It's quite noticeable. There are condition issues with the siding. There's popping and displacement, probably from the leaning. There's missing shutters, failing stoop, brick stoop. Iron gate, which allows a view of the trash cans and recycling's pretty unsightly. The neighbors don't have that. A lot of them have dealt with that with a wood fence. On the sides, we have metal drip. That's from the recent roof replacement, but we'd like to go with a minimal drip and wood trim and get back to more traditional look. We have this wire mess that we'd like to clear up, maybe the meter too. We have the mineral cement shingles to be removed, expecting to see lap siding underneath. All of those shingles are in really good shape. I couldn't find one missing. It's hard to really tell what's under there, but I believe it's the same lap siding as the front. Seems to be, as you look under this lower edge, it doesn't seem to be a lot of built up siding there. So we would like to pull this siding off, the existing siding, and see what's there, evaluate the existing condition of the original, and go from there. Same thing on the other side. This is uphill. Here is 34 Cornhill, and you can see it's in pretty nice shape. We'd like to get get to the same point, same condition. On this side, we have the mineral tile or mineral shingles that, again, we think it's the wood lap siding original underneath.
That'd be neat.
There was a variance for the proposed addition out back that was applied for and approved. And we have just views of the materials in the alley. This is the area of the proposed addition. Again, it's going to replace this deck area. It's going to come out to the same distance. It will be a little wider. And we propose to replace the wood fence with a brick wall. Not as tall here. That would be approximately 6 to 8 feet tall. About as tall as this section here. And this would also be replaced with a brick wall. Double white with a cap detail. This section of fence we don't have any plans for yet. This building here, this corner sits over the lot line of number 32. So there's a little discrepancy as well as the fence. Of course, there's nothing to do about that. This corner is not going anywhere. So I will present to you the drawings, if I could. Just back up. Bear with me a sec. So the Deckman Har residence is a private dwelling, and it's again typical of the area. We have the proposed first floor plan with the small addition, 6'4" out and as wide as the building. And then to also include a deck to replace the existing deck. And then it leaves a courtyard with the brick wall as a perimeter. And open on this side, allow light and air to pass through. Here is the existing front. And here is the existing rear. And here is the proposed front and the proposed rear. We're planning on replacing the TPO roofing with the standing seam metal. We're proposing repairs to siding and trim and shutters, replacing shutters possibly with wood shutters. And we would like to replace the existing 6-panel wood door with a new painted wood and glass Dutch door with the glazing mullion pattern to match the windows, and a 2-panel base bottom of the door, and to replace the existing brick stoop or to repair it. The rear addition, again, has the standing seam metal roof. It'll have shingle siding and painted wood windows. We'll have an awning over the back patio or French door, again with the same, the windows 2/2 and the same mullion division and a 7/8 simulated divided light. The back also shows here the new brick wall in section, and then possibly on this end, we would have a brick end that would be on the neighboring side, and the edge of that brick end would show up in the rear. The deck has painted iron railing, wood trim, and wood lattice. And here are the side elevations. Again, the the cement shingles, and to replace them hopefully with what's under there, the Dutch lap or some other lap siding. There'll be a bit of discovery, and we will iron that out, what is under there and what can be done with it. The back addition here, there are aluminum lap siding panels, and we'd like to replace this existing part of the existing frame dwelling. It's an early back addition, probably contemporary to when the cement tiles were put on. This addition with the aluminum siding was probably added about the same time. So we would like to remove the aluminum and incorporate that part with the addition as though it were a complete addition to the original front portion of the house. This is an alley side, and we would like to move an existing window forward, and these two are existing windows. These two are in the new addition. We have the awning. We have the brick wall with the cap, the courtyard, the deck and steps. On the other neighboring side, same condition, aluminum shingles for the existing, cement siding. Like to get back to the lap siding. This is the alley adjacent to 34 Cornhill up street towards the State House. And again, on the back portion, incorporating part of the original addition to the rear, and the new addition we're proposing as one addition. We're looking at this as a view from what the neighbor would see on that side. So they would see the finish of the brick wall and the brick and the shingle siding and improved wood siding. Section through. There was an idea, just back up for a second, of possibly making this a brick end, and I had talked about that in the, on the rear elevation. You might see that brick end. And it would just flow with the wall. This would be brick. I don't have that exhibit. I think I sent that exhibit in, but it's not part of this picture. So, yeah. I think that about does it. That about
Okay.
covers it.
Great.
Mhm.
Well, thanks.
Did I answer any questions?
Great. Yeah, so I think that several things we'd like to just get right out. This is an addition, so the guidelines that have to do with additions. And then there's also some renovation and movement of windows that we should talk about as well. I believe we would consider this a contributing structure. John's nodding. In 1908 is a period that is preserved pretty heavily, and so relatively strict review. So that I wanted to talk about that. So maybe we can first dispose of a few things. So the roofing material is actually an upgrade. So I think that is appropriate. The stoop replacement probably also would be effectively a replacement in kind. The addition actually is what I'd like to focus on first with our conversation, and then we are moving when we are taking out some windows and replacing them with new ones. So there's 3 windows in the rear that are going to disappear. So we want to learn a little bit more about the age of the windows that are on the rear that are being disposed of, and then the movement of one, the closing up of an existing window and movement into a new location is of note. So the windows in general, I think, is a topic we should cover. And then finally, the scale of the materials on the addition itself and the deck. So those are the kind of the things I think we should be touching on. All right, with that, John, would you like to weigh in on your thoughts?
So I saw a very preliminary drawing for this property, I guess maybe a year and a half ago. And from comments that I wrote and so on, I think that Michael and Albrecht Schwartz have done a very good job of refining the let's say proposed desires of the owner into a design which is more compatible with the historic district guidelines and the neighborhood. In general terms, the addition is subordinate. Its scale is also diminutive to the original structure. Its placement is traditional. It's not stepped back. So the siding differentiation is worthwhile. I haven't looked at the age of the addition, but an addition on an addition and unifying that with one type of siding, I think that we should discuss it. Otherwise, I think even though I didn't take note of the designation of the roof on the Sanborn map, my guess is it probably was a standing seam metal roof or a metal roof. And that, Michael, that would be designated by a symbol of an O, open.
Okay.
So, but we can check on all of that. So just focusing on the addition, I consider it to be good work, thoughtful, careful, and within guidelines. The 3 windows that are going to be moved on the back of the house, not on the side, but on the back, I believe are newer. in other words, later 20th century from what is existing. And certainly the loss of a sliding door is something that we could support. So those are my comments on the addition.
Okay. Commissioners? Yes, Will?
Thank you. A question for John first. Is it your standard procedure that when an old window is going to be replaced or removed, that you examine it and determine its age and then issue guidance to the property owner and their team as how to deal with it?
Well, typically, yes. And I haven't met with Michael on site, although I'm certainly willing to do that. Michael, can you get a picture of the two
We
windows?
do have some good detailed pictures of materials. Here are the windows on the side.
Yeah, so my walk by here, and I think that the picture bears it out. It's a newer window. It's not a 2/2 of the early 20th century.
Is that an aluminum channel, aluminum?
Yes.
Side
It looks aluminum clad.
There's
So-
the aluminum side.
aluminum
here.
channel there, yeah.
The windows would, but yeah, there's an aluminum channel there, and the siding's aluminum. It's this is typical of
Yeah, so what I'm
20th
getting at,
century edition.
John, you would allow them great latitude as long as they were using acceptable materials and keeping same size and light pattern, right?
Yes, I would.
And then
I would. It meets guidelines.
Right, that's what I mean. You're going to make them meet the guidelines, but they have latitude when they're dealing with these possibly cheap but certainly newer materials.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Yeah,
my
if
last
it-
question is also about the windows. When you're talking about windows on the backs or the sides of the houses, what is the limitation on our considering accepting their proposals? Because even if these houses were 250 years old, during time, the owners, maybe the original owners, moved windows, added windows, et cetera, et cetera. So what really is to restrict an applicant from proposing this and then being allowed to do it?
Well, I would say in this case, one of the important factors is the high visibility from Fleet Street. And so the rear of this addition would be reviewed strictly.
Okay, that's what I was looking for, your guidance or explanation. Thank you. I don't have anything else
Okay.
at the
Yeah,
moment.
in general, if these were determined to be historic windows, we probably would recommend that they be restored and moved onto the new facade.
Right.
But it doesn't appear that's the case. Okay,
No,
other commissioners?
So I had a question with regards to the leaning. And is there going to have to be some remediation in order to stabilize? Or what was, it's almost like the windows, were it's just really kind of oddly interesting how that pitch goes in and the windows are straight.
It almost looks like it was built that way.
Yes, exactly. So my question is, was it built that way?
Definitely a puzzle.
And the piers, so just also clarification, the foundation was shored up 2 years ago when the new piers were
Okay.
placed underneath the building.
That's what I was.
They were on this side only for
Okay.
4 screw piles added to
Pretty
shore it
amazing.
up.
Well, it was leaning more. And there was a lot of work done on the foundation. It was not a small project.
Is there instability in the soil there?
Well, That's a good question, but I think part of it might have been that there wasn't a footing, which was typical, especially if it was a budget house. And then the second thing would be the amount of water that ends up in the alley and having an effect on the foundation, which doesn't have a footing, and things sinking. It was pretty far out of plumb. Impressively so, really.
Yeah, I see that.
It's better now.
Yeah, the side is better. It's almost like it's twisted. The front is clearly out of plumb, but then the sides, they twist back to plumb. So a challenge for sure. And it'd be a good time to set it straight if this were to be gutted on the inside. We could look at the framing from the interior and possibly work it all from the interior. And so I think that the owners are committed to setting it straight and taking care of those condition issues. And
This is not due to termite damage. or-
you know, it's going to be,
Age.
we're going to find out when we gut the inside. how much
Michael,
damage.
I saw part of it taken apart,
Did
and
you?
there wasn't evidence of termites.
No.
It was Richard Hammond who did the work.
Oh, okay. Easily talk to him. I think
and
it's,
so-
sorry. Excuse
No,
me.
go ahead.
Well, I think a lot of the condition issues are the original foundation. It's not a perimeter foundation. It was set on piers, brick piers. And again, they probably don't have a spread footing underneath. They're probably just brick in dirt, 16 inch by 16 inch or 12 by 12.
Wow.
And they, often fail and we have to go in there and deal with that.
Okay,
So they've done, I believe, part of that with the screw piles along this alley, here, down that alley. But it didn't address the front facade, and I think, I don't know if much more can be corrected here, but at least the siding and whatnot, this popping can be stabilized, can be set straight,
sure.
paint, and can be repainted so water isn't entering and causing more problems.
Okay, just very curious.
You can see that's
Yeah.
pretty substantial when you get right up on it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
there's some other issues right
Sometimes-
here.
Sometimes correcting a historic condition that has been stable for 50 years is a losing battle. In our house, we tried to correct it. It just went right back to where it was before.
Oh,
Yep.
sort of the proverbial can of worms.
Yeah. All right. Other thoughts? I had one or two. So first of all, I think that I agree with John that the addition itself is in scale is small, and the new roof line conceals the old roof line, but it does have the kick that the old roof line had. It wasn't straight to the peak, which would have been a problem for me. At least it reads as an addition on an addition.
Yeah.
You can see that roof line. That's a good drawing there. So that would have been a concern. The materials differentiated as opposed to and other larger additions. We usually ask for a reveal of some sort or some sort of setback, but this is so small. I don't think that applies. And the materials differentiate it. So I think the addition itself is feasible. I did have one question. Why is it necessary to move or to remove the one existing window? We
One on the side.
typically don't like to remove an opening and cut a new one. So what's the rationale for and cutting one new window in this long facade is probably not a problem on a relatively secondary, but what is the rationale? Why do you need to block that window is my question.
This is moving a window to get more light in the existing kitchen area. It's very dark. The kitchen's here forward. That might be improved with the this door if the
Sure.
6-panel door Not shown 4-panel on the drawing, but it's actually 6-panel.
Yeah.
Were to be replaced with the Dutch door and the glazed upper to match the glazed transom, which I think is, a little more appropriate than the 6-panel. The 6-panel isn't a historic door. It's a contemporary replacement. And that would let more light in and into the existing kitchen, which is dark, and would maybe not require the need to move this window.
Yeah, actually, the addition of the window, it's not overwhelming from the guideline point of view. Just new windows that fit kind of the pattern are appropriate or are consistent. But actually, just blocking in a window is something we avoid. So what's the rationale for blocking the window?
I think it's in plan. You would see it in plan that there is a challenge with the narrow 14-foot wide building. It's 13.4 inside. That's very narrow. And when you walk in, you feel it. And
Sure.
so
In fact, in this- yeah.
Excuse me, sorry.
No, go ahead. So it's up behind the banquette there. Yeah.
Yeah, that's where the existing one is. And we're proposing to move it here across from this partition wall. And that would, I think, help with the banquet placement and a little privacy as well. There's apparently there's a window directly across in the neighboring house, directly across from this window. And I could probably pull up a photo that shows that, but that was voiced by the owners. That's a condition they wanted to get away from.
That would be good to know as a rationale. That provides a rationale. I didn't see the rationale.
You could show, I have pictures of that.
You can follow up on it. I might be the only commissioner who's concerned about blocking in a window. First of all, it's not a historic window, but its location is historic.
Right. Can I just back up? This is the exhibit I wanted to show with the brick.
Yeah.
On the other side, that would, this is what the neighbor would see at 34 Cornhill with a brick end on the sidewall. And that is what I was talking about in the front or the addition, excuse me, where you would see this edge here,
Right.
Continuing up as the brick. And,
I think either treatment is consistent with guidelines. It's kind of your choice. Both of them are differentiated and the materials are appropriate. Either shake shingle or cedar shingle or brick. Other commissioners have a strong feeling about that. I think both of them are consistent with guidelines.
Correct. Of course, there are conditions. This wall is right on the property line, and it would require permission from the owner at 34 to allow the workers in the alley to do the work to the side. So that is being worked out between the neighbors.
Okay. Yeah, so if you could follow up on the blocking in of that window, the rationale behind that, and I think we have confirmed that none of the windows are historic. Therefore, it becomes less of an issue. The other thing, just to look at the door on the rear, the new French doors on the rear, there's a percentage of glass on a particular facade that cannot exceed 33%, and that door is a little large. You'll want to present us with the facts on that. With the new windows and that door, it looks a little bit, again, it's just a specific technicality, but we like to be consistent.
Good point.
And that they are simulated divided light, which is feasible under the guidelines. They're allowable, especially on it's a contributing building, but it's not a major. it's a modest building. But you just will need to provide the specs that there would, and they don't. There's lots of inexpensive windows that have the buttons inside the panes of glass. So those windows, and your colleagues know all about this. So the specifications of those windows will require, they can be simulated divided light, but they need to be wood, and they also need to have the low reflectivity in the gap between the two panes needs to be low reflectivity material. And
Here's that window that sits right across on the neighbor's
oh,
building, and then there is that window we want to move. That's
oh,
the.
that
They
establishes
sit a
it.
little higher, so they look right down into the living room.
Yeah, welcome to the neighborhood.
Yeah, it's hard to avoid sometimes.
Well,
But
and-
that does, at least it provides a rationale for the decision, which is really what I was looking for.
Okay.
Okay. Other commissioners, any other questions? I'll do a summary here.
I'm good.
Okay. Remarkably, a little project like this hits a whole bunch of guidelines, but mostly having to do with the addition, which is it's modest in nature and is differentiated, so that is consistent. The roof shape, a gable roof, is consistent with the neighborhood. The design and materials are also consistent with guidelines. The fencing, from a material point of view, is also consistent. The windows have been determined to not be historic, so we're not going to talk about reuse and replacement of those. The roofing material is consistent with the neighborhood. In fact, you can see that from, I think on both sides, they're both metal standing roof buildings, roofs. The patterns of the window sashes are consistent with the existing building, which is again consistent. And then just a little more detail in your application from the landscaping in the rear.
Mhm.
And lighting would also be two other things that we would want to get more detail on in the final application.
Yeah, there was also a request to do something with this alley to add turf and pavers
Oh.
and we're going to be pulling up all of this stone in the back because it's impervious coverage. And at the
Yeah,
same.
there'll be, the other permits will be required to make sure you are consistent with that. Those will need to be procured before you come to your final hearing. I love that conduit along this wall. What is that?
Yeah, it's a big electric conduit. And again, this is the corner that sits about a foot over the property line.
Whoa.
That's a beautiful palimpsest. Isn't that gorgeous?
Great.
I
Backyards.
I found something
Yep.
interesting I wanted to share with the commission.
That's a strange,
It's
strange rear facade there too on the building next door.
bit of the history.
Yeah, I love
here.
this.
It was from 30 Cornhill, down the street, the neighboring property. And it talks about a carpenter that occupied the property around before 1910. And since it's leased the building to a carpenter, Lewis E. Lewis, who was in the house next door at number 30. But this is at the same time period, 1910, and before,
Yeah.
where the house shows up in Sanborn. And there was also talk about the siding being removed from another
That'd be
property.
fascinating to find out.
And
There you go.
Yeah, that is really fascinating. And when you remove the cementitious, I hope you find what you're hoping to find,
yeah,
that you use that and restore and repair there. That'll be a real upgrade. And then if you can see that it's Dutchmaned in, and I think, John, we have experience with that at the Maynard Burgess house, is clearly reused material. It's exciting to see that. So thanks for bringing that up.
sure.
I was reading the paragraph above and it said that the gentleman lived there with his wife and 10 children. I'm trying to imagine 10 children in a building that size.
They were much smaller then.
Yeah,
The children,
a lot of bunk beds.
a lot of outfits. All right. Well, thank you. Commissioners, any final comments, things I missed?
Well, I have a comment.
Yeah.
So have to say the Dutch door is a
On the
concept
front?
I don't think is supported in the
Yeah,
immediate neighborhood.
I
And
mentioned, I forgot to mention that, John. You're right. That
Uh,
might be a problem.
so it,
With glass panes, you mean?
I would not have a problem with a glass door, just not necessarily a
But
Dutch
A
door.
split door, you mean,
Right.
a split Dutch
Yes.
door.
Yeah.
Yeah, panels with glass, fine.
Mike, did you mean that? Did you actually mean a Dutch door that swung open?
Yes, yes, there's
Oh,
the
I
divide.
think that would be a
with the
problem, yeah.
owners. Yeah.
That would
owners
not
have
be
dogs.
consistent. Yeah, I don't
And-
think that would.
And the other thing is where there are historic windows, I think they need to be identified. What's on the rear of the house is not historic, but I believe there are some historic windows on the house.
On the front.
Yep.
All of these are,
Yep.
these three. Mhm.
But
And you can
otherwise-
transom.
Yeah, the
Otherwise,
one, the most importantly, establishing the one on the side that's being removed and blocked in, if that is historic, we will not be able to go forward with that move.
and it may be, I'll do a site visit with Mike.
Okay.
Oh, and I should say full disclosure, Michael and I worked together 40 years ago.
When you were teenagers.
Yeah, and had more hair.
Okay,
All right.
all right.
Good.
Good enough. Thanks very much, Michael. And
Welcome.
we look forward to a full application.
Okay, great.
Okay, next on the agenda is Wiseman Park on West Street. So Madeline, please promote. Hello, Shelley.
Hi, Tim.
How are you?
I'm doing great, thank you. How are you?
I'm fine. Well, thank you.
I was,
And Brian is with us as well. Hi, Brian.
Hey, how are you?
Great. And Eric.
Hello, everybody.
Hi. All right. Tell us what you'd like to know. Actually, this is a pre-application. You've heard me say this before. A courtesy extended to applicants. Nothing that we discussed tonight should be taken as approval or disapproval. It's to help you understand the feasibility of your project. So can you please acknowledge?
We acknowledge.
Thank you. All right. Acknowledge. Thank you. All right. Tell us what you'd like to know about the changes to Wiseman Park.
Well, I'll start off and just kind of give you a little history of what we're doing, and then I'll let Shelley go into the details. Downtown Annapolis Partnership received a grant to refresh Wiseman Park. It's a grant we received as part of a safety grant that we used to fund our Downtown Annapolis ambassadors. And this piece of public property owned by the city is frequently brought to our attention as the spot homeless congregate, panhandling happens, lack of maintenance causing tripping hazards, lighting that's out, public defecation. And the property owners around there typically try to avoid that park just because of its lack of maintenance and unsightliness. So we decided to try to take this project on and use some limited funds to help clean up a public space. It's tucked back a little bit, off the street, under some trees. Several different city departments maintain it. We put a group of community members together that have property in and around the area, got their feedback on what they would like to see. The city has been great so far and already doing some repairs to the area, fixing some tripping hazard, repairing a bunch of lights back there that haven't worked back behind the park. The visitor center stepped in and made a donation to the city and cleaned up the circle parking lot that's back behind the park. So we were going to take the money that we have, and we wanted to add some lighting elements to the park, replace landscaping, which I'm going to guess probably only a third of it remains from what was put in originally. And there's some volunteers that have tried over the years to patchwork some stuff that doesn't seem to match, if you ask my opinion, and make it more cohesive. And then there's a pergola that was halfway taken down by the city about 10 years ago due to maintenance issues, but was never repaired, and we want to replace it. But that's kind of a little bit of the background on it. But I'll let Shelley kind of go into the details of what we would like to do.
So could I say something?
Sure.
Since I've met with Eric, Brian, and Shelley, I guess a few times at the site, and a lot of what is going to happen there, what's proposed to happen, can be approved administratively. The real item that needs to be looked at by the HPC tonight are the proposed new lights. I'm just saying that. I'm sure everyone would love to hear all the details, because it's a wonderful improvement. And
we'd like to come back at some point and do even more with more grant money. So this is kind of hopefully a phase one to kind of just get this process started. And if we don't get beat up by the city and residents and everybody else, which I don't think we will, we'll be happy to try to see what more we can do to make it a more cohesive and welcoming space. But thank you, John. You have been a great help of coming out a couple of times to kind of give us guidance to make sure we stay on track, and we appreciate it.
So I sent in a couple graphics that I was thinking you could open from the Google Drive, or if it's not too late to give me screen share, I can pull up the graphics on my end. But there was only one image of the proposed light, similar light, and then there was one image of the arbor, which I'm not even sure we need to look at. But is that possible for you to pull up on your end?
Well, each of us can pull it up on our own drives, but you can share your screen if you want.
Well, but I don't think I was given share when we first started, because I didn't realize that was how it was going to end up happening.
Okay, well, I can share.
But if you want,
no, Shelley, you should still have the ability to share your screen. It's a big green button at the bottom of the Zoom, and then you just have to click the specific window.
Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Coming up.
Okay.
Yep, there it is, Shelley.
All right, so that was easy.
There we go.
So basically, we all, I think, know where Wiseman Park is, but just for a refresher, I actually designed this parking space, or the parking behind the visitor center that's GOTS, or kind of goes by GOTS, or the visitor center parking, which was completed in around 2010. And the arbor, interestingly, was designed by Pierce O'Doherty and Chris Shine, who I think some of you know, but I was able to get original drawings from Chris Shine. And so that was very helpful in, reconstructing something, having the original drawings. Wiseman Park is the connecting park, really connects across through to Ram's Head. So I think that's pretty clear to everybody. And just to remind everybody, it's the little pocket park. So really, we're just talking about, we had the city take out a little bit of the excess paving to try to give these bald cypress a little bit. I mean, I don't even know how they've survived so long, because they're basically growing out of concrete. But the city was, DPW was good enough to cut out a few extra excess panels of paving. And we plan to come back in the fall when it cools off and add a little extra soil, a little bit more planting at the base. So the only real change that we're proposing tonight to this part of the park is hopefully adding a couple of lighting features that are just off the primary streetscape, but just provide something interesting, something whimsical, something to sort of draw people into the park and activate the park. So this is a picture of the arbor that, even though it's a staff level, just to update you, this is a picture of the arbor when it was newly constructed. And it lasted about 25 years, the wood portion. The columns are rock solid, the brick columns, and they're just standing free right now, looking like they need a cover. So so the idea is basically to reconstruct the top with rough sawn western red cedar is the current thinking. And I think John and I have talked about this, and since it's basically a reconstruction, I guess it's staff level. But it's kind of interesting because I did get the original drawings from Chris Shine, which were all hand drawn, but we had the details to look at. This was the bigger arbor that was also taken out back there. And there's pretty significant footings in the ground. So hopefully another grant will support replacing the larger arbor, but we think within this grant, we can reconstruct that smaller arbor. And then I should mention there's a third arbor that's over by Northwest Street that's currently failing. If you look at it, the primary timbers are actually breaking. So it might be a good thing to take it down before it falls on somebody. But as money becomes available, I think it's basically would be the same exercise to reconstruct. And then the real reason we're here is to talk about these proposed whimsical lighting features, which Eric actually found and suggested. And when John and Brian and we all met, it seemed like kind of a fun idea to give sort of a point of interest tucked back in off the streetscape. It's really based on, it's almost like a modified West Street light, just giving it a little bit of a cant and a little bit of an anthropomorphic flare with a few arms, and then the umbrella idea with potentially the light coming on if people sit under. But we just didn't want to we didn't know if this was a staff level thing or if this was even we think it's a great idea because right now the park really doesn't have any interest. People just sort of pass through, but we wanted to get some feedback before we went too far down the road using this grant to get custom fabrication, because this is definitely a custom piece. And the current thinking is there's 2 benches in the park. The current thinking is to put these lights in where we took out some of the concrete paving so we don't have to disturb the roots of those cypress that we're trying to actually make healthier. And currently we're thinking that we could possibly do 2 of these. It really depends on the final cost of the custom fabrication, but we really just wanted to get feedback from the group to understand what your thoughts were and just get us started on the right direction. So that's basically all we've got to present.
Great. I think it's going to be an interesting discussion. The guideline we're talking about is D30, which says lighting which detracts from the appearance of the district is discouraged, and it should be simple in character and in scale with the building adjacent. So that's what we should talk about. So I'll turn it over to John and then commissioners to think about that. And also go ahead, John.
Eric proposed this, and I thought it was an interesting departure from the standard, sort of deconstructed and then reconstructed. But the way that I see this is that it's not necessarily just the utility of the light. It's actually a sculptural piece that is also a light. And I think it's sculptural first and it's lighting second. And I think that differentiation is important with this because it's whimsical and unusual. It's also, even though it's within view of the street, it's not prominent in the view. So the way I saw it was this should be reviewed by the HPC, but I thought that it could be an interesting addition.
Okay, other commissioners, thoughts?
I really love it. I think that this really sculptural garden in this little quaint pocket is just perfect.
We're not supposed to say we love things or hate things.
Sorry.
That's okay. No, your reaction is fine. I was just saying that that's typically that you're That's fine, Leslie. I'm more or less teasing, but
Question.
you don't feel like it has a bad effect on the surroundings. That's the only. It doesn't have a negative effect on the surrounding buildings. That's what you're. Okay. Yeah, Bobby.
Question. What is the umbrella made of? Is it fabric or metal?
Well, it's an interesting question because the quote that Eric got, the custom fabricator was assuming it was fabric, and I was assuming it was metal. And I think
metal.
the grant budget may be a driver on what we can do, but I think metal, I think, is preferable, obviously, in the sense that it's a longer term solution.
Right.
Fabric could be almost interesting because it could almost be an interactive idea where, you know, kind of gets replaced periodically with different colors or different patterns, and it becomes something that the community sees as kind of a fun, whimsical thing. So at this point, I wanted to explore both options, but before we got into custom fabrication coordination, I guess I wanted to know, you know, what the group thought.
I'm torn. I mean, I like the idea of whimsical, but I'm torn because it doesn't fit with the buildings that are on either side of it, which are historic. I'm not totally opposed to it. I'm kind of mulling it over in my head. But if it had something other than a black umbrella, that would take me more towards the not seeing it as a good fit. You know, if we were to put wild colors or, you know, something else on it, that would take me further away from trying to see it as a good addition in this park. I mean, I wholeheartedly agree. We need lighting there. It's important for a multitude of reasons. And I'll be honest, I'm a big proponent of, you know, appropriate fixtures when they can be, especially when they can be seen from the street, even if they're not on the street. But I'm a fan of whimsical too. So like I said, I'm kind of torn.
I think we're open to color. I mean, this is a picture of one that I found in Western Canada. And I decided it felt like a good fit for sculptural pieces within the park. But I think we're all open to color.
I would advise you to keep it black.
Yeah.
For a lot of reasons, it's less obtrusive, but to me, this is sort of a whimsical take on the English gentleman struggling with his bumbershoot, which would be lost by making it bright colored, or not lost, but, you know, changed dramatically. I like it. You know, you figure out what you can afford. I like it.
Yeah, I worry too
You mean
about
you find
what
it
happens
consistent
if
with
the
guidelines?
umbrella gets worn.
I find it consistent with the guidelines.
Does the group have a strong feeling about one or two of these?
A pretty small space. This looks, how tall? This looks about 12 feet tall.
That's probably about right.
Yeah, it's a pretty small space. I would.
Yeah.
My personal opinion is if you put two of them, they shouldn't be the same either. This is totally subjective on my part, nothing to do with guidelines, but from a design point of view, you know, two of these would look redundant and kind of, so if you do need a second light and it wanted to be whimsical, I might do something different.
Yeah, I think John.
That's a completely subjective opinion.
Yeah, I think this isn't really as much about the light as it is about the sculpture.
Yes.
But I think since our original quote didn't include a metal umbrella, we're probably in the grant budget realm more realistically of one anyways.
Yeah.
I think that in that size scale space, that also feels right to me, but I know Eric and Brian and John, we didn't really get into that conversation in any depth, but I kind of feel like we're realistically more in the affordability of doing one well as opposed to two not as well.
I would concur with that. And if you need another light fixture for lighting in general, it could relate to this light, but it shouldn't be a sculptural item.
Yeah, and there's 2 fixtures in there already. I'm not actually sure how well they work. And there's lots of other ways to do lighting. You know, there could be, you know, uplighting on those trees or, you know,
Yeah.
we haven't really gone into the lighting possibilities, but we were just really coming to talk about this whimsical element.
Yeah. Okay. Any other thoughts?
Keep
All
in
right. I
mind-
think what in summary, I think where John teed this up pretty well, that this happens to be a sculptural item with a light on it. And given that, art in public places is something we are supportive of. We did it with bike racks all over West Street, all over downtown. So this is a sculpture with and so would be feasible. All right.
If we stay close to this track, and you know, John's obviously there to confirm, would we need to necessarily come back to the full hearing? Or would it, if we don't diverge from what we're showing you here, could it be a staff level administrative?
I think I would recommend that you do come back because public comment is always important. We're just the commission. I think the opportunity for public comment on this, I would look forward to.
Okay.
And Shelley, just on this, not on the pergola rebuild or.
Yeah, just this item.
Right.
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to check. I mean, I'm not sure if it evolves a different direction. I think obviously we'd come back. I wasn't sure if we ended up quite close to this, if we would necessarily need to come back. But I think you're right. The public comment is, you know, always a good thing. And, you know, obviously I support the commission. So I'll look forward to coming back.
Great. The other thing, just to confirm, I think we also provided feedback that the dark or black color, uniform color was best, and probably a metal. If it is a fabric, keep it black. But if metal might, I don't know. We didn't give you good guidance on whether it should be metal or fabric. So I don't think strongly either way. That's an artistic decision.
Is that something all the commissioners agree with, or do the other commissioners, or I was thinking we were leaning towards metal, but
I recommend metal.
I personally, I'm leaning towards metal.
Yeah.
I am. Yeah, so-
Specifically for me, from a maintenance issue where
Yes.
we don't have to worry about fabric getting damaged pretty quickly.
That's true, and a simplicity from a design point of view too, as well.
okay. That's
Okay,
very
good. That's a
helpful.
little clearer then. Okay, metal.
Yeah, that's very helpful.
Okay,
All right, that's it.
all right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Next on the agenda is 28 College Avenue. So if you can promote Madeline, please. All right.
Hey, how are you guys?
Hi, George. Welcome.
Thank you guys for having us this evening on such short notice.
That's right. We understand. John explained the situation to us. So this is a pre-application, which is a courtesy extended to applicants to provide feedback on design and feasibility of your proposal. And I just need you to acknowledge that that nothing we say tonight should be taken as approval or disapproval of your proposal.
Yes,
So,
absolutely.
yes. Okay, great. Thanks. All right, let's, why don't you take over and can you share your screen? There we go.
Yep, absolutely. All right, so just a little bit of background on this. We have just been approved by John Tower. We're doing a full renovation on this house for Cody Monroe, who's a part of the Annapolis Capital Partners, who I'm sure you guys are familiar with. And we just got approved to do basically everything else on a renovation except this added detail, which is basically a proposed rooftop utility deck. So here are kind of the current street views from the flower shop. I believe that's 260 King George Street. So this kind of shows the rear deck that we're proposing to put the railing on. So throughout this whole process, we're obviously very committed to using historical materials and preserving the historical aspect of the house the best we can. So here's like some other street views. So you can see it's basically visible from the side profile of King George Street. Not much is seen from 28 from College Avenue. So here's the side profile. And the main reason we want to do this is more of a maintenance item. So we're adding mini split HVAC to the house. So we need somewhere to put the 2 units that we're going to need. We're going to run a double head system. And between our HVAC contractor and just kind of laying out where we're going to put these mechanical systems, we think the rooftop is going to be the best. And we'll position them on the side away from the street. That way they should be basically invisible from the street. And then the railing would act as basically a safety, like around the existing deck. And then we'd install what is currently a window there. We would install a door. So here's kind of the rear profile of what we're proposing. So as you can see, over on the right side would be King George Street and the flower shop. The left side would be a close neighbor. So the HVAC units would be tucked away on the far left side on the rear. And then we'd be using basically the same railing that was already approved for the front porch, and then the same rear door as we're using for the front door that was already approved. It's going to be a full wood construction. And like I said, we've already spoken with John, and these are things that he's looking for. So the other big reason is he obviously has that tree that's in between the flower shop and his property. So as you can see, it gets littered with leaves, vegetation's even growing there. So ideally, like, he would be able to go out there as the homeowner pretty consistently and clear this rooftop deck, which kind of necessitates the need for a safety railing in my eyes. If it was just like the HVAC component, where, you're servicing, maybe once or twice a year, that's kind of, a niche time where you'd have to find yourself on the roof. But because it had to be maintained so frequently, we think that a railing may be necessary for safety view. So here's kind of our general plan. As you can kind of see, like from that past photo, a lot of the joists have been rotted out. So we have a full framing plan to reframe those and restructure the roof. So we'll replace the rotted joists. We'll replace that window, like I said, with a wooden door to promote ease of access. We'll set the mini split units over on the right side as hidden as possible. Like I said, it should be nearly impossible from the street to see them. Install a full cedar railing around, which was already approved. It's going to be the same railing that's going on the front porch. And then just install a walkable deck membrane. So here's kind of our gist of our materials and what the HVAC system will look like. And then this is kind of the specs on our walkable membrane. So any comments?
Okay. Yeah, I think I'll just tee it up. This is effectively becomes what we would consider an addition, a minor addition.
Okay.
The issue we're going to need to talk about is the roof deck. And that's D9, which talks about the overall character of and this is reading to me as a roof deck with the railing, which we've talked about in multiple other occasions. And the fact that it's a walkable membrane, and a door, it strikes me as it is going to be eventually used. So I think we need to talk about that issue. Then the utility D27 that talks about screening utilities, which you've moved them to the other side, but they're not completely screened. So those are the two guidelines I'd like us to talk more about. So John, what are your thoughts?
Well, I have been talking about this project with George and Dayami for some time, and the house is just about, I think, 100 years old, and severely compromised. All the windows are vinyl. all of the siding, even though it's cedar, is replacement. The original roof is not in place. Instead, we have this synthetic. So in terms of the railing design for this addition, we didn't really talk about the design. What George has done is has taken what I approved as a sort of generic replacement for missing elements of or covered elements of the first floor and used it on this floor. But I do think that there is visibility from King George Street toward this, but I also think you have to look for it. It's not the sort of facade that is prominent, and with the magnolia tree, the Magnolia grandiflora, there is an issue of the leaves collecting and so on. In terms of a rooftop deck, it's not the most prominent roof. It's along, let's say, L portion, and it's still a major consideration. But enclosing the utilities, I think it does something to hide them, which I think is worthwhile. So I was surprised when this came up as sort of the caboose on the project. Everything else was approvable administratively, and so here we are.
Okay. Other commissioners' comments? Yeah, Will?
Is there a backyard? Is there a backyard? Is there a property?
There is a small rear patio, I believe. It's very small.
Like 10 by 15, 10 by 20?
Maybe even smaller than that.
Okay. The reason I ask is because I'm thinking of, what kind of impact this would have on the neighborhood. And John has addressed the most important aspect from our guidelines, I think, already. And I agree with what he said. But just the view that you've given us, this is like somebody's small backyard is one floor off the ground. I mean, normally when I think of a deck in the historic district, I think, there aren't a lot of decks that might make annoyance, change the character of the neighborhood. But John addressed the visual aspects, and I think this wouldn't have any more impact than somebody who had 2 or 3 people in their backyard. So,
and as you can kind of see, there is somebody sneaking back there who already has a rooftop deck.
I didn't catch that.
Not to call anyone out, but
yeah.
Unfortunately, we don't have control over things that we're.
Yeah, no, I know.
We can't approve.
But just for like you were saying, that aspect of disturbing neighbors and fitting in with the neighborhood.
Yeah. Yeah. I could see it.
And sorry, just a little bit of like background of like this is like I guess consider like the attic of this house. So like the main living space is, a floor below this. So
it isn't off a bedroom or a living space.
Yes. It's off of
a third floor living space. So the main living space is on the first floor, which is all the living room, kitchen, and entrance to the house, dining room space. The second floor is the bedroom and 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms. The third floor is really very skewed dormer style roof line of a 10 by 10 space. It's not a large space. That's where that window would lead out to there. So it's not accessing off of a living space.
Like a rec room?
it could be considered, I would think, like it could be accessed as an office space for somebody, like they might be able to consider a desk or something, but it really is a finished attic space where roof heights, ceiling heights are not accessible for a bedroom or an entertaining area, but more like an area where you could place a desk or two.
All right, other commissioners? Yeah, Leslie?
So is the pitch to the roof going to change? Is it going to be more flat?
Yes, yep.
It's a deck.
Yeah.
It's a roof deck.
Slightly.
It'll be a slightly.
It's slightly.
It's going to drain, you know, have this drain. It's a roof deck.
It's a deck.
So George, is that correct? You're not changing the pitch of the roof?
He said it's going to be flat.
So slightly in our reframing.
And that's while replacing the
It's
Oh.
yeah, in order to fit a little bit more of a door there.
Oh, well,
Slightly.
there's a detail I didn't know.
Ouch.
But by percentage wise, would we suggest it's 2%?
It's very slight.
Right,
And
for drain, for
that's something,
drainage.
and if that's something we couldn't do, I think we could still achieve this with keeping the current pitch.
Maybe with a shorter door.
We were just
Yeah,
trying to
we're getting-
maximize the size
yeah.
of the opening. But go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, yeah. So if none other commissioners, I would have trouble finding this feasible, given our decisions in the vicinity with other similar applications. Because it is a roof deck and has a silhouette against the sky. Our problem, when roof decks are on lower levels and not on the top level, we have approved them. This is on a top level, and from a silhouette point of view, on a fairly prominent intersection, I believe it will be seen, and it reads as a roof deck. And even just over on King George Street or Prince George Street, we had this discussion and considered it not feasible.
Yeah.
So in other areas, when this, and not prominent areas, but when it comes up, if it doesn't read as a roof deck, because I'm sorry, but I believe that this will get used. I would use this if I owned this house. So
Well,
I would want to use it. So
like
with
the
the railing is what is striking to me as makes it look like a roof deck. Would you consider a parapet that wasn't a railing?
Well, we need to screen
Yes.
the HVAC.
Yes, and Cody would be more than willing to screen anything and to fit within any ordinances that you guys wanted to follow for sure. And we would absolutely be able to accommodate that. When it looks at it, it's not the top floor. I mean, it is the top floor access, but there is a roof line certainly that goes well above where so you can see how both roof lines,
Yes.
both from the side view and the back, do extend beyond. It's not the top access as shown the properties behind that have the very, very similar like feeling and experience. But we would certainly consider something else.
Okay, I'm sorry. I just have to ask you a question. Can you introduce yourself? We hear your voice, but you,
Oh, I
for the-
apologize. I'm Jamie. I'm on the invite as well. I'm just
Okay,
sitting
gotcha.
next to George, trying not
I
to
just-
be in his space too much.
I just didn't.
apologize.
I wanted to welcome
Yeah.
you, but I just didn't. Just for
Okay.
the record, we just need to understand who's speaking.
Yep, absolutely. A member of Bohan Contracting as well.
Okay. Well, I might be the only commissioner that feels this
No.
way, but yes, you're right. But those are thin dormers. It goes the whole width of the building. Even if it wasn't the whole width of the building, it would be better. If it truly is for utility screening and it will be seen from a very prominent corner.
Yeah.
And
I
it wouldn't be
would much
consistent with
prefer
our.
to. Sorry, Tim, go ahead.
It wouldn't be consistent with our decisions on other like designs.
So is there a way that we can present for something that would be more in line if there was, like you said, kind of the parapet or something, maybe building the siding up a little bit further on the side instead of railing, so it doesn't appear to be a deck, but rather the utility space, and again, access to be able to clean that space off. Like one of our biggest concerns is those joists that are under there that are required to be replaced right now, or a portion, as our structural engineer came out to tell us, like it won't continue standing the way it is. And he was giving reason that a lot of that rot was happening from above and coming in. So
that's fine. Will, you have your hand up?
Yeah. We're talking about the visibility and whether that makes it feasible or not, and whether changes need to be made. And this is a very good photograph, the one on the right. And what I would say is, as a driver in my vehicle, there's no way I would notice that there was even a railing there, because I've got.
How about as a pedestrian?
Okay, right. And as a pedestrian, look at the view on the left. You couldn't see it. I don't think anybody would see it unless there was somebody out there dancing naked. I'm being flippant in the way I'm saying it.
No, I know what you're saying.
The cowboy in New York.
Well, in my opinion, again, I'm only one commissioner.
Yeah.
But I would not consider it feasible as designed. But if it was just a parapet, then it doesn't read to me as a roof deck.
Okay. And that's I mean, honestly, that's kind of, I think, why we're here. We just want to get something up there that will conform and be safe. So I think we can absolutely.
And there'll be code issues with the height of it, the parapet. I don't believe they'll let you. Again, on the rear of my house, I have this exact same condition. The parapet is only 2.5 feet high. I couldn't.
That is a good solution to.
Yeah. So, Bobby, did you have a comment?
I was just going to say, I would much prefer to see something in the way of screening around just the HVAC units than the full, the full railing all the way around with all of that stuff. And I'm not familiar with parapets as much as you obviously are from your house, but there's got to be a way to, deal with the safety issue without having to put a railing all the way around like that, because I am concerned that if we approve something like this, we're setting a precedent that, we're gonna get other applicants who come to us and say, but you approved this rooftop deck. Now it may or may not be a rooftop deck, but they're going to point to it and say that it's a rooftop deck. And so we have to worry about, can we be consistent, and can we, are we adhering to the guidelines correctly? So.
Yeah, I would agree. I would. If it's for maintenance of the roof, it doesn't need to be the height of a railing. And if it's for just maintenance of the HVAC, it does not need to be the height that we're talking about here.
Yeah, and I think these pictures probably depict exactly why the proposal had happened for wanting access to be able to maintain it, because of the rot that happened beneath with all of the vegetation growing on it.
Well, that
it does collect a lot. So if there's a way to find a solution that's an in-between, we're happy to present that and get that.
Well, regular maintenance would take care of this.
For sure.
Yeah,
right? I mean, you don't need to go on. You don't need a door and a railing to maintain the roof like this. So I just think we need to acknowledge the fact that this is a roof deck and it will be used as such. At least I am of that opinion.
So one note as well about access to this portion of the house. The stairs are very historic. It is very much an attic staircase that you kind of have to adjust and duck to get up and into. It's not like a clear, it's not an accessible space that you would access very easily as a normal flight that would go from flight 1 to 2 and accessing bedrooms. It is a very narrow attic staircase.
Understood. I'm with Bobby to say that if we were to approve this, we are going to see other people wanting to convert flat,
Okay.
relatively flat roofs.
So do you think it's a possibility of using the lower railing?
Or
The
parapet as
yeah.
described.
Yes, I then it does not read as a roof deck and couldn't be used as a roof deck because it wouldn't be safe.
Right.
Exactly. But would still provide some
The screening.
Exactly. And some safety factor of the homeowner being
Some
out there clearing
yes.
the deck,
Correct.
So. Okay.
Right.
Perfect.
All right. So we had a rousing discussion on roof decks again. And I think where we are, where the commissioners are divided on this one as opposed to approving it in the visibility, as opposed to a lower parapet wall which screens the utilities and provides access. So I think we're divided on it, but hopefully that provides you with some guidance if you want a unanimous opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. And then as far as like the door goes and like slightly lowering the pitch, well, how do you guys feel about that?
Well, increasing or keeping the pitch at what it is so that it's not flat will also not be a roof deck. If it's a pitched, first of all, another thing, it's a walkable membrane. You advertise it as a walkable membrane, which you need for the maintenance. But if you increase the pitch, then it doesn't. The more you make it flat, the more it's a deck. The more you increase the pitch, the less it's a deck.
Understood.
Okay. Well, hopefully that provides you with some guidance.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
You can work with John on further details too.
Okay, perfect.
Well, it's nice to see you, George. I
You
don't
as well.
think we've met in person. Do let me know if you're planning to or if you're proposing to change the pitch of the roof. That's an important element.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll make that very clear.
Yep. And we'll get back with Cody and get back with John. I really appreciate everyone's time and thank you again for taking us, the slate. So
yeah, that's okay. We're here to serve.
Glad it worked out.
Awesome.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you.
That's it for tonight's agenda. Any administrative business to be? I have one item to talk about. Any other?
Why don't you go first, Tim?
Okay. Just wanted to give an update on the city doc presentation a week ago, Thursday. It was well attended by, it was to city council. And I think we saw some additional drawings. Mainly, we should all be aware that the visitor center is a large scale building, 10,000 square feet at the end adjacent to the Burtis House. And that design continues to cause me concerns. And so you should be aware of that. So if you haven't seen the presentation, I recommend looking at it, and I can also just send out the PowerPoint for it. They also presented to the Maritime Commission last night, or Tuesday night. And the Maritime Commission had some logistical concerns, in addition to where the bathrooms were, for instance, public bathrooms, close to the buses. So the design is moving, and we're tracking it, and we are asking on a regular basis for Eileen to come to another public meeting for a public hearing sooner rather than later as these designs. Apparently, it needs to be handled as one large project. They can't break it into phases because of FEMA, some FEMA restrictions. So our hope that they could come in pieces to us apparently is not going to happen. So it needs to be treated, which is I would have preferred. I think we could have approved certain pieces so they could get moving.
They're going to build it in phases, though, in 3.
They are going to build it in phases.
So
But apparently, the plans need to be enough of a detail for FEMA to say it's insurable, and that unlocks some additional funds for the city. The theme, Bobby, you were there. The theme that the city councilmen were going on is where it would still several million, $20 million short. And they're unwilling to say, approve it when all the funds aren't secured. So that is where that stands. It seems like I have one more. The height elevation legislation they've had two opportunities to put it on the agenda and they haven't. So we're fine with the legislation and the agenda because it's just adjusting to what we're already doing in practice. But it hasn't been approved by City Council yet for some reason. So that's still bumping around in the background. We have no action to take. We've given our action. Unless they come back with a completely different amendment where we'd have to look at it again. So I just want to let you, that's an update on that. If you have any questions, let me know. Okay, and John, you had something?
Well, Tim, I can't remember if you mentioned that we had received the $20,000.
Oh, thank you.
Right. And why don't you talk about that?
Well, I did. I mentioned it last time, and the ball's in my court. There was some paperwork that needed to be completed that Sherry completed yesterday. So the ball is in my court or our court to write an RFP to secure a consultant to do the work. We also have the opportunities for other grants. John, I'm not sure maybe you can update us on whether you were able to get some money in your budget in the range of $6,000 or $7,000, but also we can apply for grants from Chesapeake Crossroads for additional funds.
I'll know in the next week. We're
Okay.
coming to the end of the fiscal year.
Yeah, so the ball is in my or our court to draft an RFP. I'll find some models for this kind of thing. I can put out on National Association of Preservation Councils. It's got a great listserv, and I'll put it out there. Can someone give me a sample RFP? And I won't recreate the wheel. And then I need to work with Maria probably in terms of procurement.
So I want to mention one thing as we move forward with City Dock and possibly the looking at the Maritime Welcome Center. I think that it would be worthwhile for everyone to look at the report that was created for Bertis House, because Bertis House is this commission's primary concern for a historic structure on City Dock. And the report underlines the importance of Bertis House. And I don't think that we want to forget that. I think that it's important for us to look at ways to feature Bertis House in the context of the new City Dock. So we have the reference to the old in its original position, just slightly elevated. But we want to make sure that it doesn't end up being a footnote that's only visible on Prince George Street. And that's going to be a challenge, I think.
Okay, thanks for reminding us.
I can, and I'll send out the report to everyone. It's actually
a great report.
So it's so well written. It's so, I mean, but it's good for context, good for perspective.
Yep. And John, was there a planning commission meeting last night having to do with the maritime zone and height issues there?
Or
is it next week? It's next week.
I think it's, I don't think it happened last night.
Okay, I think it's next week. So apparently there are height restrictions in the maritime preservation zone in addition to ours, which have entered the picture.
Right.
So
right, and that's going to affect approval for Bertis House being raised. Who knew?
All right. Well, we'll be tracking that too. Okay. Any other business?
Nope.
Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.